Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Make Up or Breakup. We are on yet another exciting session of this wonderful podcast.
That's right.
Good morning, Lou. Welcome to the soggy weather we're going to be getting. It's going to get worse, I heard.
Yeah, nor'easter. It's a non-snow nor'easter. Thank God this isn't snow. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm hearing it was pretty bad like early this morning in the wee hours that woke me up.
Yep.
But I heard it's going to get really bad tonight. So whatever we heard at 2 a.m. is nothing.
Oh, so that'll be good surf out at the beach. Could go make a trip out to see the surf.
Yep, that's what they're talking about. In fact, it was crazy because on the news last night, the 11 o'clock news, they were showing pictures of Falmouth, and it reminded me of pictures of hurricane seasons, like when they hit like Houston, or New Orleans, where completely flooded out streets in Falmouth.
Oh, really?
Cars stuck in it. Yeah, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, Falmouth, Mass, because we don't usually see that here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was last night. Imagine what's going to happen tonight.
Oh, I might get stuck on the island.
Yeah. You might.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you're not going anywhere at 8 a.m.
If I have food in the refrigerator, I got to make sure to bring some food home. Never know what's going to happen.
That's right. You might need to hunker down for a day or two.
Yeah, no. Well, no. Normally, that's a high tide situation. So if the road gets closed off, it's usually only about 4 hours. But
right.
But it hasn't happened since I've been there. And it's a every 2, 3, 4 year thing. So I'm about to. So we'll see.
Yeah, this could be it. This could be your entertainment for the year.
Got to check the tide chart and see how when it's going to happen and whether it's going to be high enough.
Yeah, they're saying it's going to be crazy along the shoreline.
Yep.
Tonight. Well, I think we're going to continue with narcissism because I had so much good feedback on it. Excellent. People really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people have dealt with at least people with narcissistic tendencies. And, this is a good way. People like to solve, they like to understand things. And narcissist behavior is difficult to understand. So when you start to get that roadmap and the pieces start to come together, it's healing for a lot of people.
Exactly. So I have this good quote from Rumi, R-U-M-I. You've probably read things by him.
Sure.
I thought I knew who I was, but I was you. Pretty good. Yep. Because when you're involved with a narcissist, you are no longer just you. You're part of this weird entanglement.
Yep.
So I thought that was a good one to read.
Yeah, your main purpose is to feed the self-image of the narcissist.
Right. I mean, there's a reason why you were chosen by the narcissist, because you fill a need. You fill their glass up for all the different things that they need.
You are supply. Yeah.
You're the supply. You are the supply. And one of the things that we've talked
about. You are supply. You are part of the supply. Narcissists usually cultivate a lot of different sources of supply.
Right. You have to keep all the pots going.
Yep.
Right. And we've talked about one thing in the past, which is essentially reminding ourselves that if we're dating or married to a narcissist, it's important to remind ourselves that, yes, we do own a part of it, especially for staying in it.
Yep.
But we also have to realize at the beginning, it was like the spider web. The narcissist seeks you out. They seek out the people that are the givers, that are super nice, that are always accommodating, that say, oh, forget about my ideas for the weekend. We'll just do his or hers. Right.
Yep.
And I think that's important because sometimes we in the past for me, I don't know about you, but I started to doubt myself, because no matter what I did, I couldn't quite get it. And I remember actually saying out loud to a friend once, I just suck at this relationship thing.
Yeah.
And my friend turned to me and said, that's not it. You just suck at breaking up with this guy. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I do. I got called out on it. I'm like, you're right.
Because another aspect of what you open the show with talking about is you become, not only do you become that person's world and part of their self-image, you start to buy into it too. So your opinion of yourself becomes their opinion of you, because they're never wrong. And every time you have a problem or you bring up a conflict, it gets turned on you, and you're being dramatic or you're inadequate in some way. And they tend to choose people who are susceptible to believing that. And so that's a trap you fall into.
Right. And the other thing to remember, we're going to talk a little bit about this. I don't know if we have talked much about this in the past, but the narcissist can come across as being the life of the party and, belle of the ball, whatever.
Yep.
But they also need, it's almost like this, this weird, like adult, like it's like this adult kid, right? Because they need the person that they're with to almost be a caretaker as well.
Yep.
And that's kind of a weird concept, especially, if you're a somewhat healthy young adult or older adult, you kind of assume that you don't have to be someone's caretaker unless, of course, there's an illness that comes along.
Yeah, it's funny because mine, and again, I don't believe she's a narcissist. I just believe she has narcissist tendencies. But the beginning of my relationship with her, she was in college and I was just out. And I remember meeting her and we got set up on a blind date. And I remember part of the big thing about being with her was she's just going to get eaten alive in college because she was the belle of the ball and she was around and every guy was after her and all that stuff. And she seemed really innocent and stuff like that. And so it's like, might as well be with me because I'm going to, I'm not going to, ruin her. I'm not going to abuse her, so there were immediately there was that caretaking part of it.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. It's so interesting. The dynamics of it and how we get caught up in it.
Yep.
And especially if it's the first person that we've had this kind of relationship with, we really can't put our finger on what it is because we're not really, our radar for it is kind of off.
But this is a good exercise because in that instance, for me, I don't know how much of that was her and how much of that was me. For example, I was susceptible to being the white knight. I liked being the white knight. My personal worth was in what I could provide for people. So, guys like to be, the white knight and the protector and things like that. That's a typical male role and men generally like that role. So when you get an opportunity to do it, the damsel in distress, how many times have guys fallen for the damsel in distress?
Yep. And how many times have we seen our friends do it and we say, don't do it. What are you doing? She's a nut. Right? Like,
yep.
Like as an outsider watching our friends go through it, we say, what are you doing? She's so unhealthy. There's something not right about that girl. That kind of conversation.
But I'm going to be there. But I'm going to be there for her and I'm going to protect her and she's going to see worth in me because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So one of the things that they talk about when they talk about narcissists is, although they are emotional loners.
And by the way, women do that too. How many times do women go into a relationship going to fix the guy?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Yep.
50%, maybe 60% of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
He needs me.
What?
He needs me. So when I fix him, he'll really love me. He'll understand my worth.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, initially, we don't see the issues as, unsurmountable. What's that?
Insurmountable. Yeah.
Insurmountable. Yeah. We just feel like we can handle that.
Right.
Like, over time I can calm them down and they won't be needy in that particular area.
No, she just needs some love. He just needs some love. That's all. He needs someone to care about him.
Yeah. Right. And there's also a tendency to look at the past and just make this big, huge leap of assumptions that they weren't treated correctly before. But this time, because they're with Mr. Nice Guy or Mrs. Nice Girl here, we're going to be able to change that.
But that's a common theme with narcissists, that they like to present themselves in relationships as the victim of previous people. Previous people have been in relationships were all bad, right? They've got to, because they're not around anymore, it's got to be their fault. They had to be abusive. They had to be the fault in the relationship. It had to be a bad experience for them. That's part of the narcissist profile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's also a general flashing red flag when someone is blaming everything on their past relationship. Like before you came along and met, the knight in shining armor there.
Yep.
When they're completely throwing their ex-girlfriend or spouse or boyfriend, whatever, under the bus.
Right.
It is a flashing red light because it says, even if the other person really was kind of kooky and maybe responsible for 98% of the drama, like to not recognize some of it that you played, or even to say, but I'm guilty too because I stayed and I tried to fix things. Like whatever it is that you did.
Yep.
But when you start dating somebody and they can't say what it was that on their own without you grilling them, if they can't say on their own, yeah, but I wasn't perfect either.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
have to be dating people that recognize what they brought to it.
Because they're with a narcissist, nothing can diminish their self-image. They can't be wrong. They can't have a problem. They can't have a behavioral issue. They've got to be perfect. So by that self-image, to keep that self-image going, everything has to be entirely the fault of the past relationships. So that's really typical of narcissists.
Right. And also it's in general typical of signs of what's yet to come. And it's just not a good sign to be with someone. Even when we talk about dating, and you and I talk about this a lot, we talk about when you've had a breakup, whether you were married or just dating somebody, even if you only dated someone for 6 months, there was a rhythm, there was an expectation, there was a relationship of some sort, even if you only saw the person once every 2 weeks, right?
Right.
It was something. And that's why it's so important, whether it's 6 months, 6 years, I don't care, 6 decades, sit back and take the time to heal. And if somebody takes that time, hopefully between themselves and their friends, if their friends are good friends, maybe some therapy, whatever, maybe some coaching from Coach Judith. It's during that time afterward that you really get the quiet time, the opportunity, I call it, as opposed to like, oh my God, I'm all alone. That's your opportunity to go self-reflect and think about what just happened.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that is, and we've touched upon it a couple of times in the show, I think a lot of that is trying to figure out your part in the problems of the relationship. Right. Because 100%. we all tend to externalize and put all the fault on the other person, and you don't heal that way. And it's especially true with narcissists because you can't understand their behavior. You can't understand why they did what they did. And then, as I've said in the last few shows, a real key turning point is when you start asking, but what was in it for me? I know they behaved poorly. They're narcissists. They have a disorder. They behaved unreasonably. I mean, you just shake your head. How can a person do that? And that's all true. But you stayed there because you needed something. There was some need that was being filled for you. And starting to figure that out helps you start to put the pieces together.
Right. And I think it's true. We want to recognize that for the most part, the narcissist was looking for us. They were looking for someone with our strengths and our susceptibilities, which end up making us a perfect match for them. But at the same time, we need to sort of analyze what our strengths are. Like there's pros and cons to every strength, right?
Sure.
It's like the American dream is to have a great big house and a couple of sports cars. Maybe it's not my dream, but but I mean, we all know what the pros of that are. But the cons are that's a big house to clean.
Yeah.
And you're either going to be doing it, or you're all going to be doing it, or you're going to have to hire someone. So now you have to pay more money to hire, someone to clean a 6,000 square foot house. Yep. Sports cars are expensive to keep up. So the con could be that. Also, sports cars tend to be finicky sometimes, and they are the cars, not our reliable, older used cars.
Right.
The sports cars are the ones that you really don't want to be in the middle of nowhere and run out of gas, because those just can't be fixed up.
Yep.
So the same thing goes with people. Our qualities and wonderful characteristics, the pieces of our personality that people admire in us, can also be used against us. And when you're married to or dating a narcissist, your wonderful qualities actually make you susceptible to that whole spider web, and they end up being used against you. I guess I'll say that, right?
Yep.
And so we've talked about that. Mm-hmm. So one of the things is, I feel like you and I kind of fall into this just based on the stories that we've shared with each other. But to a certain degree, you and I are what I would call like super empaths.
Yes.
We can read a room usually, but we can also read the person that we're with. They don't have to slam a door. They don't have to walk quickly. They don't have to take their
Okay.
glass and
Yeah.
we feel, right, something's not right. And what's our tendency to then,
Well, to try to fix it, or try to fix it basically. But
right?
see, that's where you have a strength, and there's a point where you go too far with that strength, and it can become a weakness.
Hmm.
Because what I tend to do with that is I tend to threat generate all the time. So I'll create conflict where there is none. I'll read something, and I've joked with you about this before. The problem is I'm not wrong enough, wrong often enough to discount it. But you know what? Sometimes I am wrong. Sometimes I think there's a problem, and you can just you get a feel off a person, you get a tone off a person that they're upset with you or whatever, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's something else altogether. So
Hmm.
the weakness of that strength for me is that I tend to generate threats that don't exist. So I have to vet everything. I have to try to figure out if everything. I have to take my own responsibility and try to figure out what's real about what I'm thinking.
Hmm. Right. And a lot of that, like I said, comes from the empath in us,
Yeah.
because we feel it, and we're so used to taking on other people's pain and being able to sort of help process it for them. Like, we're not afraid of that. That, like you said, that also becomes a weakness, and in particular with a narcissist. But it can also just be from a general abusive person or a general controlling person.
Yep.
They don't even have to be a narcissist,
Right.
right?
But for me,
Um, mhm,
being the tendency to be the white knight guy, that
mhm.
person who's in distress, I often consider that an opportunity to create worth in that person's eyes. I'm going to be
Right,
there for them. I'm going to help them. I'm going to take care of this. Guys are famous for this anyway. I'll fix that. I'll go take care of that for you.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The
Which
other
is
thing
all
that's,
great qualities and helpful and
yeah, those
great
are,
in a
that's,
relationship, but they
yep.
get abused. There's a
Mhm.
point where it becomes abuse and it becomes detrimental to everybody.
Right. And there is also a point, let's be honest, Lou, where the other person should be taking more responsibility, as opposed to us trying to help them along, fix them, create the environment in the home. Like, stay-at-home moms are classic for that, right?
Yep.
Get the kids fed and bathed before the angry guy comes home,
Yeah.
who wants the perfect family, wants the perfect evening. And they're a narcissist, so they don't want the kids coming first and screaming and yelling for attention. So what the mom does is, over time, she just um, gets them ready, fed, so they're not as cranky. Gets the table cleared off so that Bob or Tom can come home and have, like, their nice peaceful dinner that they want.
But with the narcissist, that's often a test. They get a sense of their own self-worth by the extent that you'll go to save them, that
Right.
you'll go to fix things for them. The extent that you'll go to war for them feeds their self-image. And, well, I want him to really love me, so I want him to take care of this for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, the interesting part of that is when you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. When you don't go along with that and you don't feed them enough, so to speak, into their egos and their issues, there's hell to pay.
Yeah. Narcissistic rage. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the other aspect, and another characteristic that we typically bring into a narcissist's environment, that they're looking for, the qualities that are good but that are used against us, are, we're super easygoing people. Like, you and I talk about this on the show a lot. We're pretty flexible. And with a narcissist, you have to be,
Yeah.
because your ideas for Saturday's apple picking, it's probably more than a 50-50 chance that your narcissist isn't going to want to do that. That wasn't in his or her plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right?
well, I'm flexible, but right now I'm seeking peace. So I'm not flexible because I'm flexible. I'm flexible because I'm a path of least resistance guy.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
when the narcissist starts to get, dig their heels in, and they're not really giving in, we're so easygoing and flexible that we are the ones that give in.
Yeah.
And again, the problem is, we think we're being nice people, but what we're really doing is we're feeding into this
Right.
toxic, unhealthy relationship.
Yep.
Right. And we figure that out over time. But then the problem is, how do you extract yourself? So we talk about that later. We may not get to it today. Another theme that we're talking about here, that's a good characteristic, but is used heavily against us in the sense that it's overtapped, is that we're generous.
Yep.
Like, we're generous, we're giving. How many times have have so many of us, like ourselves or people we know that the narcissist in our life is expecting, and it's so stupid because I don't like these things, but the narcissist will want the great big surprise 50th birthday bash.
Yeah.
Or the 30th birthday bash. And like, that's not really my style, but it's interesting because the person that I dated that was definitely, a narcissist, like I heard about that for weeks. Kind of like, in this sort of poor me, sad dog thing, like, Jude, I can't believe I just thought for sure you were going to surprise me with a birthday party. And meanwhile, I'm like, well, I kind of thought like going out to dinner with two other couples was a pretty big deal, considering each couple cost me $200, after you put the drinks in.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was really nice because sometimes at parties, let's be honest, like you don't really get to talk to everybody.
Right. But no, it's a big show for the narcissist. That's all.
Right. So, I remember having that feeling of duly noted. It's not all about me. So now I'm kind of taking it in the wrong vein, right? It's not all about me. I have to accommodate this person's style and their needs and their desires. And, next time around, it was an expensive surprise party. I don't know if you've ever planned one, but they're a pain in the butt because there's always 5 people that didn't RSVP and you're pretty sure they're coming, but you're not sure.
Yep.
And there's part of you that says, will they be the ones that park in the driveway because they're a doofus?
Yeah.
Like, if I don't talk to you from an RSVP, I can't be sure that you're going to keep this a surprise and come at 4, not at 4:30.
But there's a degree that aspect that you talked about ago, that it's not all about me and I have to take this other person into account. There's there's an amount of that's healthy and proper in a relationship, but it's so easy to get pulled past that point. It happens slowly, it happens incrementally, but eventually you get pulled past that point where it's healthy.
Right. Well, and so the other thing is when my nose itches, when we're generous and giving people, I took some notes. We take it for granted that other people will reciprocate for the most part. So if I'm buying you and 3 of my friends Christmas gifts and birthday gifts every year, I mean, I don't expect much, but because you guys are my best friends and whatever, I'm expecting that you're going to reciprocate. But the person that you're dating or married to that's a narcissist doesn't always reciprocate. So you go out of your way because you're kind and whatnot to get like the sweater from the nice shop. Okay, $150. It's ridiculous for a sweater, but you paid it. And they wrap it nicely. And then maybe they like a perfume. So you're like, you know what? I happen to notice their perfume's getting low. I'm going to get them another one of those too. The assumption is we're in a relationship, Lou. So there is this assumption that for a lot of us that being generous and giving is kind of what people do in a relationship.
Right.
And then it's so hurtful when you can tell that the narcissist doesn't usually go far out of their way. It's like they ran to the Macy's that's 2 blocks away because they live in Peabody. And you can tell that they just went in and picked out 3 sweaters and had them wrapped.
Yep.
There's nothing super special being reciprocated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But we justify it. They work a lot. They're too busy. Oh my God. She's a single mom. She doesn't have time to go pick special gifts for me. Come on.
Right.
Right. We try to justify why we're not really getting that reciprocal attention.
Right. Yep.
It's just kind of weird. And I think that what happens is at first we kind of feel like, well, that's not their style or they're too busy. So we're not really noticing it. But then over time, we're kind of like, this feels like a pattern of, me giving a lot and the other person not really giving a lot. And it really trips us up because in theory, we should be giving and other people should be giving. And I'm not saying expensive gifts, but thoughtful, I guess is the better word.
Yep.
Well, a narcissist just is not going to spend 8 hours at a mall looking for 2 thoughtful gifts.
Right. You put the energy into taking care of them. They will not put the energy into taking care of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other characteristic that we have, those of us that have attracted narcissists, is we look for the good in others. All right. So that's a characteristic of ours. Like we tend to overlook the things that don't quite look right, don't, like I always tell people, if it looks like a duck and it starts to talk like a duck, it's a duck.
Yep.
But because we pride ourselves in looking at everybody for the most part in like almost like a innocent until you're proven guilty kind of thing.
Right.
Some people tend to look that way at people, like, look, I'm not going to be super judgmental until I see some actions that tell me I should be like backing away.
Yep.
That's a little bit of a naive outlook in life, I think. But when we have that outlook that, hey, everybody's a decent human being, they just might have different opinions and things, that's where you're going to start to trip up, because you're not looking for even a flashing yellow light.
Yeah. But narcissists tend to present outwardly, they'll present as the belle of the ball, as you said, or the guy who's really together and has everything going for him and everything's going great. But within the relationship itself, they present themselves as very needy and very victimized.
Right.
They're also always looking for attention from you. So what you tend to do as an empath or someone who's susceptible to a narcissist is you tend to just think, well, they're struggling right now, so I'm gonna put my attention into them because they've been victimized, they're struggling, they're having problems. So now's the time for me to support them. And then that just turns into years, actually, is how that turns out to be.
Yeah, it's like the weeks turn into months, Lou. Before you know it, you're in a 2 to 5 year relationship.
Yep.
And now you're kind of melded in there. That's the hard thing, right?
Yep.
So because the narcissist needs a caretaker, we caretakers are big believers in second chances, right?
Yep.
Come on, Lou. With our narcissists, we probably give them 1,000 second chances. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. We believe in hope. So we're hopeful that this is going to turn around, that these behaviors are going to go away. Like I said, when they don't have a stressful job anymore.
Right.
Now that we're here, they're not really a single parent because we're kind of helping. We take the kid, we maybe babysit when they have to work on a Saturday.
Yep.
We have this optimistic view that
things are going to get better.
Right. This is
temporary. This is just a storm. This is temporary.
Right. And also, we're constantly looking for the other person's willingness to change. Like, we kind of feel like, if I point it out in just a really small, nice way, that they're going to go, oh my gosh, thank you for the introspection. Thank you for telling me what I don't see. Because, if we say to someone in a nice way, when you come in and you just throw your briefcase on the table and storm over to the fridge and just grab yourself a beer and you don't even say hi, like, it just makes me feel like, I don't know, I'd rather have a better entrance, even if you've had a bad day. Like, can you just sort of look for me? And
right.
And you have this feeling like, if I say it in like a really nice way, like I just want to have a hug or, that kind of thing, you feel like the other person will have this willingness to change.
Well, this is similar. I do a bunch of addiction podcasts, and one of the things that you find out about addicts in general is that their mindset is completely different. Non-addicts try to deal with them based on the perception of their own mindset, but addicts think completely differently. The same is true for narcissists. You tend to think of them as having reactions that are normal to what you know and what you go through, which is why when it gets really bad with a narcissist, you just sit there in a corner and go, I can't, how would a human being do that? I mean, everyone who's been involved with a narcissist has had that moment where humans don't do that. What in God's name, you just don't understand what they're thinking because their mindset is completely different.
Right. Exactly. And that is so true. When you talk about that, I hadn't thought about how it reminds us of an addict.
Yeah.
Because I have several clients whose spouses are addicts of drugs and or alcohol. And no matter how I coach them to say X, Y, or Z, their spouse isn't hearing it. I'm like, what part of that one simple sentence did they not understand?
Yeah,
right?
But it's a completely different reality. They live in a different world. They think completely differently. Narcissists are the same way.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the other thing is, one of the things I have my clients do, and they feel bad about it because, again, like an addict. It's like being married to a narcissist. So the addict is with someone that's super kind, super over forgiving. Yeah, the eternal hope bubbles in that house, right?
Yep.
It's a continuing bubbling. So I always tell them, videotape them, because when they're sober, they can hear this. But if they see it, it's completely different. It has a much bigger impact. This was you, this was your brain on drugs 2 nights ago, or this was you drunk as a skunk, and that's your son sitting in the family room watching all of it.
Yeah. But when you're in the throes of addiction, that will shame you at first, and you will react to it at first. But not too long after that, you'll be back in the same mindset again.
Right.
Because the underlying factors haven't been addressed. Yeah.
Right. Because that it will have impact during that conversation, but 6 hours a day, however long it takes, they're not going to think back to that when the addictive product presents itself. They're not going to be like, wait, I remember that video that I saw yesterday or whatever. I better not do that again.
Yep.
Because I think part of it too is that they always justify it in the way that they think that was just a bad day. It's like, well, even if you didn't have another bad day that bad, we still don't think that you should be doing the drugs or alcohol, because there's going to be all these other ramifications.
But one of the biggest factors in dealing with narcissists is that the mindset is completely different. And until you understand that fact, you're just baffled by everything that's going on. You don't understand how a person can do things the way they do. It's because they're thinking totally differently than you are.
Right. And, if it seems confusing, it is.
Yep.
We're here to validate that.
Yep.
So even when the narcissist is acting rude or hurtful or selfish, we caretakers is what we're calling us. We typically forgive and understand, hoping for better behavior in the future.
Yep.
And that's part of the loop, and it's part of the rerun, the hamster wheel that we own.
And it's why you were picked.
It's why we were picked, but then it's what we own as well.
Yep.
Right. The other thing is the narcissist picks us because we're steady and reliable. When they say, let's get together tonight at 6, we can cook in. You and I are there at 6, getting ready to cook in.
Right.
When there's a wedding to go to or something, we're ready on time. We're ready to go.
Yep.
Like, we're the person. We're their +1 for weddings, for their dysfunctional family holidays. Like, we're reliable. It's like, I'd probably rather see my family at Thanksgiving, but he really doesn't want to see his family on his own. That was my ex-husband.
Yep.
My second one, Mean Jim, as we call him. I often gave up my own wonderful family holiday experiences because he couldn't handle with his family. I mean, he just couldn't stand his family. Like I said, it turned out that they were actually more normal in so many ways than him. But he presented well. He's the one that left the Cape, got a really good job, made good money. But what do we say about all that, Lou?
Yeah. Doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But, I remember at a certain point feeling like, is it wrong to not want to go to your in-laws' house and things like that because it's not joyful, it's not a lot of fun, it feels tedious? No joke. After half an hour, you're casually looking at your watch like, dinner's not even served, and we're probably an hour away from that stupid turkey not being ready yet.
But the narcissist can't go without you. The narcissist can't go without, because that's going to be a statement about their self-worth.
Right.
But you talked about reliability. Reliability is devotion, and devotion is supply. And, the idea that you're reliable to them means you're prioritizing them. They are important to you, and that helps their self-image. That's supply as well. So they value reliability, they value consistency, and they'll always react strongly when you're not reliable for them.
Right. The other thing is, because we're so reliable, they know, because they chose us, they know that also translates into, when there is like the surprise birthday party, or when there is the trip to their Thanksgiving with their dysfunctional family, that we are going to make sure it goes smoothly
Yes.
because, we're very good at making sure that there's a positive experience. We're kind of like the fixers. We're kind of like the guy at the end of that cartoon growing up with the little brush, the little broom.
Yep. Yep. Cleaning everything up. Yep.
Right. So why wouldn't they want us to go to their dysfunctional family event?
That, and they don't want to show up without, without somebody.
Right. Right. Especially if their siblings are married or whatever. It's like they need that plus one.
Yep.
Which is really awful because it turns out that dirty little secret, that's often a self-imposed image. Most families aren't necessarily caring about that.
Right.
I mean, yes, there are families out there like, geez, what's wrong with her? Like she still isn't married or whatever it is. Right. But I don't think that's the majority of people. I really don't. Not in today's day and age. I mean, people don't have to get married at age 18 anymore. That's just not a thing.
And oftentimes with a narcissist, that self-image within the family is vitally important to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other characteristic that we caretakers have is that we like to please others. I mean, let's just call it out. To a certain degree, it's kind of like the reason why we're steady and reliable and we know it. And it makes us happy because we're pleasing the other person to be that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And
for me, part of my personal struggle is being a pleaser and taking care of things to people helps my self-worth.
Right.
Yeah. People will like me and think I'm worthwhile because I take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And we like that positivity. That's the small accolades for us, right? There's that small gift that we get from a narcissist, which is the knowledge to ourselves that thanks to us, the dysfunctional family Thanksgiving was a little smoother. The conversation kept going. I think I've told you about situations where I would go down to the Cape with, this family and like, nobody would talk. I'm like, who sits in a living room and doesn't say anything? And it's not because they were mad. They were just so awkward and dysfunctional that they couldn't even small talk with their own family.
Yeah.
Like there must be something about each person in the room you could say, like ask them a question about something in their life.
Yeah.
But it was like, a group of deer all sitting in a living room looking at a set of headlights.
So you're going to fix this.
I fixed it. Yeah. I would get up and get some cheese and crackers and pass it around to break the ice and, ask them, I brought this, this is one of my favorite cheeses. It's got dill in it. Like, do you guys ever get that down here in the Cape? And all I'd get would be like a one word.
Yeah.
Answers. It was so awkward.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional. And it was just, but I just couldn't take it. I couldn't just sit there and watch. I just had to be that person because I'm like, I can't sit there for like 5 hours like this.
I know, huh? How distressing.
It was,
yeah.
I don't know. That guy might get more than a chapter. He might get a book.
There you go.
Yep. So now, one of the things that author that I talked about before in her book about how to heal from a narcissist, she talks about susceptibilities and vulnerabilities. One of our vulnerabilities is we're overly loyal. Now that's kind of a strong statement, but overly loyal is the term. We're not just loyal. We're not like, nice, steady pleasers. We're overly loyal. And this is the key that we're going to look at for a few minutes. Once an emotional caretaker makes a promise like us, it's forever. In adults, promises are usually reciprocal. In other words, I'll do this and you'll do that, or I'll give this and you give that. This applies to many things such as promises of love, friendship, marriage, financial support, or fidelity, and even small things like promises of going somewhere together, being somewhere on time, again, expecting that the other person will reciprocate.
Yeah, that's what this goes back to all the time, because if you're a loyal person, you are usually a loyal person because you seek loyalty in return. If you're a
Right.
fixer and devoted to somebody and reliable to somebody, it's because you seek that in return.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, the narcissist is attracted to those types of things. You get drawn into a narcissist and you don't realize until you're well into the web that that reciprocation isn't there.
Right. So even when the narcissist breaks all of his or her promises, we are likely to keep on as if everything in the relationship were just as it should be.
Yeah.
We believe that if we keep our promises and stay loyal, the narcissist will eventually come around and fulfill their promises to us.
Yeah.
So again, I think the operative word in here right now is going to be overly. So we're overly loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
The other thing is we're overly sympathetic. How many times have we felt bad for their work situation? They have a crappy boss, or maybe
Right.
it wasn't the boss, could have been them. But we think, oh my God, your boss is so demanding, or yeah, your ex-husband is terrible. Like you should get the kids more often.
Because they
We're
present as
sympathetic.
victims. Yeah. Because they
Mhm.
present as victim. That's the thing within a relationship. They want to be the victim so that they can
Yeah,
draw out all these qualities in you.
right.
And the
Exactly.
other thing about the thing we haven't mentioned about narcissists in here is the reason these things last for years and you get so ensconced is because it starts looking like, I remember the old saying, the devil doesn't show up in horns and hooves.
Right.
He shows up as the thing you want the most. And
Good
that
one.
that's basically what narcissists are. At the beginning of the relationship, they show you all the things that you have wanted and you are after.
Mhm.
You like the belle of the ball, you like the gregarious person, and they show devotion back to you. They're very over the top in their devotion to you coming back. And then as the relationship goes on and more starts to show of their real nature, they do have this great skill of reeling you back in. They can give you times when you see that exactly what you're looking for. There'll be nights, there'll be a trip, there'll be something that shows you exactly what you're looking for. So you get sucked back in for more because you just get a taste of it every now and again. And you say, it's out there. As soon as we get through all these troubles, it's going to be great.
Yeah. It's there. It's
Yeah.
just they have a bad boss
Yep.
or they have a bad ex. It's like it's not
Yep.
them, it's their scenario that's, making them less reciprocal.
Yep.
Exactly.
But
The
they
other
know how
thing,
to toss it in every now and again just to keep you strung along. They're
right.
very skilled at that.
That's right. That's what we call like a morsel.
Yeah, exactly.
The other aspect of our susceptibilities and vulnerabilities is overly giving, which is a little bit different than the overly sympathetic, because we often forget about our own needs. We can therefore become exhausted, irritated, and disappointed in others. Caretakers strongly believe in giving in order to receive. When we want love, caring, kindness, or consideration, our first thought is to give more of these things
Right.
to others so that they will give them also to us. However, we may be so self-sufficient that we often don't ask for consideration or even give other people a chance to reciprocate. But that's one slightly skewed way of having relationships. However, with a narcissist, you eventually feel unappreciated and taken advantage of. Again, it takes years, not months.
Right.
And the relationship becomes more and more unbalanced. This overgiving makes you highly attractive to the narcissist, who greatly enjoys the comfort of this imbalance.
Yep.
Right. So one of the people that posted some comments a few weeks ago, Cheryl, in her situation, she even felt so bad for her husband being in between jobs, and they just married. Okay, remember this part. Okay, they didn't date for very long, and they had only been married for 6 weeks. And long story short, he's on the couch with alleged depression for the next 10 and a half months.
Wow.
So she pays all the bills and many of his own bills. I mean, he had child support to pay, lots of different things.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. And, that would be overly giving.
Yes.
Right. And she's still learning because she's become a client. That is a big area where we're trying to teach her giving is fine. Overly giving is not okay. Right.
Right.
Being sympathetic is great. That's a great trait, to have a sympathetic heart. But being overly sympathetic, there is a line in the sand, and sometimes people are, and we've had ourselves or our friends that act that way.
Yep.
Oh my God, that person, they just give so much. I feel so sorry for them. It's like they're always like, like I've even heard of stories where like some guy or some woman goes and buys their boyfriend, girlfriend a brand new car. I'm
Yeah.
like, see, now you think that's a kind thing to do,
Right.
but because it's not a one-time thing because of a one-time financial crisis. This is how they do love. This is how they do relationships. And you and I just sit there going, that just seems crazy.
I know, right?
Never mind the fact that this person probably isn't Mr. or Mrs. Right. And to them, they do it because they're really looking for that. It's a form of, I hate to say it, but it is like buying love.
Yeah, but what's going to happen is after the relationship with the narcissist, you'll wonder about that buying a car for them, and you'll blame them, and rightfully so, for getting you in that position.
Mhm.
There's some truth to that, but you really have to turn around and ask yourself, why did you buy them the car?
I know.
Because you bought them a car to get some reciprocation. You bought them the car to get something from them, whether it was looking more worthwhile in their eyes or more
Mhm.
worthy in their eyes, or just looking for reciprocation. And
Mhm.
not that there's anything wrong with that, but you really need to examine. But there's a point where it goes too far and it's unhealthy, right?
Right.
So
Right.
instead of blaming the narcissist for buying them the car, obviously that's a problem and they brought it on and they
Mhm.
looked for it, and obviously they have a role in it as well. Examine your role in it and what it was you needed so badly and you thought you were going to get by buying them the car. And what you thought you were going to get by buying them the car is a better relationship, more devotion from them, more reciprocation from them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, Lou, because people try to justify those kinds of actions. And I often say, if that person literally has no relative and no friend that they could go to for a loan, and you've only known this person for 3 to 6 months or even 9 months,
Yeah.
like, there's a big red flag right there.
Plus, by the way, if you valued the relationship, you wouldn't put that stigma of that loan in the relationship, right? You
Right.
try to do it some other way.
Right. 100%.
Because you'd be worried about the reaction in a normal relationship with a normal person. You'd be worried about how they would feel about having to loan you the money.
Right.
But what the
Right.
narcissist picked you because they know you will not only have no problem with loaning them the money, you doing it willingly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
And
you're that type, and they were looking
Mhm.
for that type.
Right. And as we've talked about, it's gradual during the first few weeks and months, and then it sort of builds up. And before you know it, like I said, you're buying them a car,
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is, and I don't know that this is necessarily you and I, but for the caretakers, part of our vulnerability is that we have a strong sense of guilt. Um, you know, Never really good enough.
Yep.
So there may be another reason that you overgive in a relationship. You may feel that you aren't good enough, so you should give more.
Yep.
Most caretakers expect themselves to meet extremely high standards of goodness, which can lead to feelings of guilt for not doing enough for others.
Yep.
And boy, does a narcissist love you, and that's part of your motivation is, that boy, that's like they hit the jackpot when they meet you.
And oftentimes in a narcissistic relationship, the person who's being victimized feels lucky, feels fortunate to be with this person. Like this person is kind of out of their league. Again,
Mhm.
they're the handsome guy, they're the belle of the ball, everyone's attracted to them, but they chose you,
Right.
and so you feel lucky, so you just feed it more and more and more and more.
Right. Um, and another area of vulnerability is that sometimes the things that we're doing for the narcissist in our life is that we have this strong fear of anger and disagreement. So a
Yep.
lot of us, and I know you and I tend to be this way. I don't know.
Huge thing to me right now, being
I'm
conflict
probably
averse.
less.
Yeah.
Right. You are conflict averse.
Yeah, I am, absolutely.
So that can be a motivator for doing more than you should just because it keeps the peace.
Yep, exactly. And I value the peace over whatever it is I'm giving up to get the peace.
Yeah.
But that's a losing battle in the long run too.
Right. Well, and this book is great because it has right in here this perfect statement for us to chew on before we sign off for the day. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, there are a lot of conflicts.
Yeah.
And the narcissist always wants to do things his or her way. So you must either give in all the time or fight for what you want. Narcissists use your fears about conflict to coerce, control, and force you to give them what they want.
Right.
You can find it extremely hard to stand up to such an intimidating and stubborn person. Yeah, the narcissist I'm thinking about, like that last statement really rings true with me. Intimidating and stubborn, which is funny because that's not even a word I ever thought of to describe him, but he was stubborn.
Yep. But they're very skilled at they're very skilled at it's funny when you're training a dog or something, or they tell you to reward the behaviors you want and don't reward the behaviors you don't want.
Right.
They're very skilled at creating a negative for you when you resist them. In other words, the way the personalities work, whenever you have a problem and bring it to them, or whenever you resist one of their wishes, it turns out worse for you. It's worse than, it's worse than the thing that they're looking for. To say no to it is worse than actually doing it. So again, you pick the path of least resistance because they're very skilled at making resistance a negative for you. It never works. With a narcissist, standing up to them never works in your favor. It's never a positive outcome for you.
Nope.
Never.
Nope. And the thing is, if you're already a person that is anger averse, right?
Yep.
And you're not good with conflict and disagreement, forget it. Like, you're like a dream come true for a narcissist because
you'll get anger, you'll get ghosted, you'll get diminished, you'll get blamed. They're very skilled at turning it around to being your problem, and you're creating the problem instead of avoiding the problem or fixing the problem. You're creating the problem.
Right. And this isn't always the case, but I do find that, again, this is obviously not the case. I'm not making a general term. What I am saying is that in my expert opinion, based on my expertise with all my clients over the last like 11 or 12 years, the people that get super worked up and angry and have anger management issues are often, narc 101.
Yeah.
It's interesting now that I think about it, because when I think of like the narc that I dated for several years out in San Francisco, the anger was real. It was fierce. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not that person. Like, even when I've been really ticked off at people, I never had like, some people tend to thrive on it, but I was never that person out in a driveway having a screaming match.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and even in the house, like I wasn't the person that was like going at them physically, like walking towards someone in the kitchen. I'd be standing like this in the dining room. Like, my favorite thing is to just sort of stand like this and listen and then say, yeah, but like to make my point, I'll be like, yeah, but to my point, the way I see it is, and I do that. But I never physically move toward the person as I'm in an argument. A narcissist does that.
Right.
Because as they get more worked up, they're still trying to like get you to cave. So they need to engage you more. And the way they do that is by literally physically getting closer, locking eyes with you. And meanwhile, you and I are like, oh my God, like kind of a crazy, who has arguments like this in our adult life? Like, what are you, like a 2-year-old?
Our self-worth and our self-image is very important. And other than death itself, one of our biggest traumas in life is death of self. We see it all the time. And you see it when people divorce, when they're no longer a wife. They're no longer this person's wife or this person's husband. That's a death of self. You have to rebuild yourself and go from there. It's very traumatic. With narcissists, it's that times 10. Anything that threatens their self, anything that threatens the image that they're trying to put out. And by the way, they're very vulnerable to it because they don't buy the show. They understand it's a show.
Right?
They understand that they're a fraud. And anything that's going to show that to everybody becomes hugely aggressive to them. And they will defend it aggressively. And that's where the narcissistic rage comes from, because everything they've accomplished in life, everything they are in life is based on this self-image, this false self-image that they're creating. So they're very protective of it.
And the other thing is, we've talked about this before, that the narcissist is often, they often were unintentionally, sometimes unintentionally groomed for this bad behavior as the golden child growing up.
Yeah.
So if you're used to getting your own way because you're the favorite kid in the family, obviously you're going to have a temper tantrum in your 20s and 30s when people don't go along with things, because it's like, wait, like that's not how life works. Like when I ask for things, I'm supposed to get them.
Right.
They like missed the mark in the family upbringing. They failed that test of, you don't always get what you want.
Right.
Because they did. And so that's why we talk about, good parenting, bad parenting. And, we'll be doing more parenting sessions in the future, because those are always my favorite, because I like to call out these bad behaviors that maybe we did some of it, maybe we didn't, but there are people watching these videos, these episodes, who need to hear, as kind as you are as a parent, not creating boundaries could be, you could literally in your very own home be cooking up the perfect recipe for a kid gone wrong in their adult life. And we're calling that a narcissist. You could be right now creating a narcissist in your very own home, a self, what do you call that? Like, what do you call it when like when you get a toy or a bike and you put it together yourself?
Oh, do it yourself.
You've got a do-it-yourself kit.
Narcissist kit. Yeah.
You've got a narcissist DIY kit in your very own, sitting at your very own kitchen tonight, sitting at your very own kitchen table tonight.
Yep.
And it really goes back to a certain degree, better to err on the side of caution. So some parents may come across, like I sometimes came across, as being too strict at certain times, only compared to other parents. I personally didn't feel that it was a bad thing to have a kid try to make their bed at age 3.
Yeah.
But apparently I had friends that thought that was outrageous when they met my son when we moved to Lexington and he was in first grade. They couldn't believe that he had to make his bed. And I'm like, what are you, nuts? I'm like,
really?
It's literally a 40-second thing. Just pull it up over the pillow. That's all it is.
You're not looking to bounce a quarter off it. You just want them to have some sort of effort and recognize some responsibility and live up to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the perfect made bed. It's just an effort to put the room together a little bit.
Right. And it says we all have chores and we all pitch in and we all have responsibilities.
And there's something other than you, which is something we don't teach kids as much. It doesn't seem like we teach kids as much these days. In the parenting I see, it's all about me. It's all about, it's all about them. It's all about it. Kids don't learn early enough or often enough that there's more to the world out there than them.
Right. Right. Well, we'll talk about this another time, but that just brings up the whole subject of these parents that have their kids in 7 activities a week.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. It's like, no, little Janie doesn't have to do ballet and jazz and soccer and the flute. She doesn't.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And I think that these kids need downtime. I think part of the problem is they don't have downtime. And when they have downtime, what do the parents do? They shove a tablet or an iPad in front of the kids.
Right.
So now they don't even have to be in the family room with you, at least, watching a TV show together. No, they're upstairs on their iPad.
Yep.
Or they have their iPhone with you. God, by the time they're like in 2nd grade, they have their iPhone and they're texting their little buddies while you're all trying to watch a TV show together.
Yep.
So it's like,
Yeah, parenting's a whole nother subject.
Yep. We'll be doing some of that soon after we get through this healing from a narcissistic relationship. But stay tuned, and we're going to wrap up. But as usual, we just ask people to take some of these episodes and share them on your Facebook page. And if you need help with dating or your marriage, or you're thinking about getting a divorce, or you're already going through a divorce and you just need help, give me a call or look me up. jjamesongroup@gmail.com is my email. Send me an email.
Yep. Or if you know somebody who could use this information, who needs to hear some of this information, by all means, get it to them. Find a way to get it to them.
Right. There's people suffering out there, and they're not necessarily speaking up and telling you. Even your friends, they just don't. They don't like to talk about this stuff, Lou.
Sure, and they don't like to confront you on
Mhm.
the problems you might be getting yourself into. It's
Right.
a difficult role for a parent. It's a difficult role for a best
Mhm.
friend. But I know a lot of people out there are seeing friends who are suffering and having issues, and it's not necessarily you telling them to break up or anything. It's
Nope.
or
Mm-mm.
divorce. It's that
Right.
have a skill set that helps you ease some of these issues.
Right. Well, and a lot of times my marriage work is with one person. So I'm sending the husband or the wife into the marriage to make it better.
Yeah, because again, and the theme here, as we bring it back to narcissism, is narcissists are wrong. There's no doubt about it, but you're playing a role, and how you're dealing
Mm.
with it and how that role you're playing says a lot about how intense and how bad this gets and how long it persists. And you have some control of the situation. Obviously, a
Mhm.
narcissist is trying to take over all the control, and they are largely to fault, but you're contributing to it, and you can change that, and that can
Right.
change circumstances.
Right. Well, and by the time I get people, they've lost the control. And I said, well, there's only two options: keep going along with it and be miserable, right? It's kind of like being in a boat that has holes and you have to keep putting your finger in a hole just in order to keep afloat and to go down the river,
Yep.
or ditch the boat and get a new canoe, uh, meaning a new life.
Yep.
You know, bring your canoe over, put it on the side, get out, walk through the woods.
Yep.
And that's the part that becomes fun for me, is helping people realize that they will be okay. They can be okay because we create a plan. So like when people say, "Oh my God, I'm going to be homeless," I'm like, that's cray cray talk,
Yep.
because nobody needs to be homeless. And it's rare that any divorce or separation will have you homeless, especially because we create a plan. And part of my plan is where you're going to live and how you're going to do it.
Yep.
So I can't stand it when people say that. I've even had people who have $1 million houses say that to me.
Yeah. Well,
I'm like,
just being overwhelmed by fear. That's all.
right. So it's the fear. So, yep, I can
And
help. So
it
give
goes
me a
back to
buzz or
goes
what?
back to death of self. It's just like
Right.
they live in this house with this person. That's who they are. And they're facing giving up that reality, that self identity, and starting a new self identity, which can be daunting. It's daunting for everybody, but it can be overly daunting for a lot of people.
Right. So I may try to wrap up our series on narcissism next week, see how
Okay.
far we can get on that. And then maybe we'll switch into the dating world, because we had talked about showing profiles and
Oh, yeah.
showing some pictures and that kind of thing. And so we could talk about like what looks good, what doesn't, what works, what doesn't.
Yep.
You could talk about the horse lovers out there.
The horse lovers. Yeah. Be careful about women who have horses. They'll never love you as much as they love the horse.
That's right.
Yep.
As they like to say, the horse always wins.
The horse always wins. No doubt about it.
Yep.
All right.
So anyway,
Coach Judith Facebook page and check the video section for past episodes here, including this series on narcissism, which goes back a few weeks. So make sure you catch up on that if you like the topic, and join us Tuesdays at 11.
that's right. Be well, be healthy, everybody. We'll see you next week.